imagine, if you will, being born into this perfectly climate-controlled biodome. Like the temperature inside is just always exactly 72 degrees.
Oh, wow. Sounds pretty nice, actually.
Right. The sun always shines at the perfect, most flattering angle. And, the people inside with you, they never, ever disagree with you. They just nod, they smile, and anytime you want something to happen in this enclosed little world, it just, it happens.
Yeah, absolute paradise at first glance.
Exactly, at first glance. But think about what actually happens to a human mind in that environment over, say, 10, 15, 20 years. What happens when you start believing that because you control the weather in your little dome, you actually have the power to control the universe?
That is a dangerous mindset to slip into.
And more importantly, what happens to your psyche when someone finally, inevitably, throws a rock through the glass?
Yeah, because the structure completely shatters. And the outside air, which is, cold and unyielding and utterly unpredictable, it just rushes in all at once.
It has to be a total shock to the system.
Psychologically, it is a terrifying experience. I mean, human beings naturally gravitate toward illusions of control. We desperately want to believe that the world conforms to our expectations of it. And when we are insulated from friction, we lose the mental calluses required to handle objective reality.
The mental calluses. I like that. And that shattering of the glass, that incredibly painful but necessary rush of reality, that is the exact phenomenon we are going to explore today. Welcome to another deep dive.
I am really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, so are we. And for you listening, we are looking at a stack of incredibly rich, nuanced sources today. On one hand, we have this extensive English transcript of an audiobook of Jane Austen's classic Emma.
A fantastic text.
Oh, completely. And we are pairing that tightly focused text with a comprehensive Arabic video transcript that summarizes the entire plot. So that gives us this really fantastic bird's eye view of the narrative architecture.
It is a highly effective combination for our purposes. I mean, the English excerpts plunge us right into the microscopic moment-to-moment dialogue, the subtle psychology of the characters.
Right, getting right into their heads.
Exactly. While the Arabic source allows us to step back, see the entire chessboard, and really trace the overarching mechanics of the story from beginning to end.
And just to be super clear with you listening, our mission today is not to just look at this as some dusty 19th century romance of manners.
Oh no, but not at all.
Right, we are conducting a deeply philosophical exploration of self-deception, the architecture of isolation, and, the painful process of moral awakening.
It is a profound psychological study.
Yeah, of a mind trapped in its own echo chamber.
Mm.
We really want to figure out what happens when a person possesses absolute security, total isolation from criticism, and the sheer arrogance to believe they can play God with other people's lives.
Which, honestly, is a philosophical inquiry that feels acutely relevant to our modern moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Perhaps even more so today, given the technological tools we have to effortlessly construct our own digital biodomes, right? And just filter out dissenting voices.
That is such a good point.
Yeah.
We all have our own little domes now. So let's start by looking at the architecture of our main character's reality. I really want to understand the physical and social dimensions of this biodome.
Okay, let's dive into it.
If we travel to the village of Highbury, to an estate called Hartfield, we meet Emma Woodhouse. What are the blueprints of her specific reality?
Well, the English source material establishes the foundational problem in its very first sentence. It introduces Emma Woodhouse as handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition.
Handsome, clever, and rich. That's quite a combo.
It is. It goes on to state that she seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her.
Wow. Very little to distress or vex her. I'm trying to wrap my head around that level of insulation. I mean, the Arabic source mentions she has a fortune of 30,000 pounds.
Yes, a staggering amount.
Now, I know inflation is tricky to calculate, but at the early 19th century, that is an astronomical sum, isn't it?
Oh, it makes her entirely financially independent, which was, incredibly rare for a woman at that time.
Plus, she's been the mistress of her father's massive estate since she was 12 years old, following her mother's death and her older sister's marriage.
She has absolute domestic sovereignty. And this is where we begin to see the formation of what philosophers might call an epistemic bubble.
An epistemic bubble. Okay, break that down for us.
So epistemology, simply put, is the study of how we know what we know. It is how we acquire truth. Emma's privileged starting point has created a severe flaw in her epistemology.
Because she never has to struggle for anything.
Precisely. The text itself explicitly diagnoses this. It states that the real evils of Emma's situation were the power of having rather too much her own way and a disposition to think a little too well of herself.
So she lives in an environment where her subjective reality is practically never challenged by objective pushback.
Yes. I mean, alternative voices are not merely ignored in her world, they are structurally absent. The architecture of her life literally prevents her from encountering intellectual equals or contrary evidence.
I want to pause on that term, epistemic bubble, because it's so central to everything we're going to talk about today. You're saying that because she never experiences friction, her brain fundamentally stops processing information that contradicts her desires.
It goes even deeper than that. In a true epistemic bubble, you just don't have access to the outside information. And if we're talking about architecture, well, every echo chamber needs walls.
Right.
And it seems like the thickest, most impenetrable wall in Emma's life is her father, Mr. Woodhouse. The way the sources describe him is fascinating.
Yeah, he's an extreme hypochondriac.
Yeah.
Completely terrified of change, right?
The text refers to him as a valetudinarian. He is obsessed with health, disease, and the perceived dangers of the outside world. But what is truly vital to understand is how his hypochondria operates as a philosophical mirror to Emma's own mental state.
Oh, that's interesting. How so?
Well, Mr. Woodhouse exists in a heavily controlled physical environment, just as Emma exists in a controlled intellectual one.
Okay, can you give an example from the text of how he controls that physical environment? Because I know he has some very specific ideas about diet and travel.
Oh, absolutely. He insists that everyone around him should eat a small basin of thin gruel because his own frail stomach cannot handle rich foods.
Thin gruel. Sounds delicious.
Right. And there is a deeply illustrative moment when his other daughter, Isabella, takes her family to the seaside town of Southend for their health.
A nice beach vacation.
You would think. But Mr. Woodhouse is entirely appalled. He claims it is an inherently unhealthy place and insists they should have consulted his own local apothecary, Mr. Perry.
Ah, Mr. Perry.
The text quotes him lamenting that Perry says that colds have been very general, but not so heavy as he has very often known them.
Wait, so he completely outsources his perception of the wider world to his local doctor?
He does.
If Perry says colds are general, then the world is full of colds. If his own stomach can only handle thin gruel, then everyone in the room must eat thin gruel to be safe.
Exactly.
There is a line in the Arabic summary that touches on this too. It says he genuinely cannot understand why anyone would want to leave his house or get married. He sees marriage as a tragedy because it disrupts his controlled environment.
And this brings us to a crucial philosophical concept, which is solipsism.
Catholicism.
Extreme solipsism is the belief that only one's own mind is sure to exist. But practically speaking, it manifests as the belief that one's own mind, sensations, and fears are the only valid reference points for reality.
So everyone else is just an NPC in his game.
Yes. The English text notes his habits of gentle selfishness and states he is never able to suppose that other people could feel differently from himself. He projects his own physical fragility onto the entire universe. If he feels a draft, the world is freezing. If wedding cake disagrees with his digestion, he actively tries to dissuade guests from eating it. He cannot conceive of an independent, autonomous reality outside his own nervous system.
Okay, I'm processing the parallel here. You're saying Emma's doing the exact same thing, just on an intellectual and social level instead of a physical one.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it, yes.
Her father is imposing thin gruel on everyone's literal diet, and Emma is imposing her own thin narratives on everyone's lives.
Precisely. And this structural solipsism is exacerbated when the only person who might have offered gentle, loving correction gets married.
Her governess, Miss Taylor.
Right. Miss Taylor gets married to a Mr. Weston and moves half a mile away to a house called Randall's. Miss Taylor's departure leaves Emma in a state of what the text explicitly calls intellectual solitude.
Wait, but Highbury is a large village. She's not literally alone. What does the text mean by intellectual solitude?
Highbury is populated, yes, but the text meticulously notes that the Woodhouses are first in consequence there, and that the village afforded her no equals. She is surrounded by people who are socially inferior to her, financially dependent on her family's patronage, or intellectually far below her capabilities.
That reminds me so much of how we talk about certain high-profile tech billionaires today.
Oh, that's a very fitting comparison.
Right. If you are a CEO and you surround yourself exclusively with people whose paychecks depend on your approval, what happens? Every time you pitch an idea, even a demonstrably terrible one, Your inner circle claps and calls you a visionary.
The feedback loop is completely broken.
Exactly. Eventually, that feedback loop breaks your grip on reality. You start assuming every random thought that pops into your head is a golden revelation. But I have to ask, is Emma's delusion actually her fault?
That is a complex question.
Because if society has built this biodome for her, if no one has ever possessed the social standing or the courage to tell her no, can we really blame her for thinking she's infallible?
That is the core ethical dilemma of her situation. If we look at this through the lens of Aristotelian ethics, well, Aristotle argued that virtue is not innate, it is a habit.
A habit, meaning you have to practice it.
Yes, it is a muscle developed through practice, through friction, and through interaction with peers who challenge us. If you are entirely insulated from that friction, you cannot develop the moral muscles required to see yourself clearly or to act justly.
So she's basically morally out of shape.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Furthermore, Emma's natural intelligence actually works against her here.
Wait, really? How does being smart make it worse? Shouldn't her intelligence help her see the truth?
Not if her epistemology is flawed. Because she is clever, she possesses the mental agility to perfectly rationalize her delusions.
Oh, I see.
Without a peer to force her to reality test those rationalizations, her cleverness merely allows her to build a more elaborate, convincing maze for her to get lost in.
But she does have one person who reality tests her, right? Mr. Knightley. The sources mention him as a family friend.
Indeed. Mr. Knightley is the brother of her sister's husband. The text specifically highlights him as one of the few people who could see faults in Emma Woodhouse, and the only one who ever told her of them.
The only one. That's a lot of pressure on him.
It is, and it is vital to note his limitations within her sphere. He is a magistrate, a busy landowner, he does not live at Hartfield. He visits, he observes, he critiques, but he is not a constant presence.
So he's not there day to day to stop her from building these mazes.
Correct. Consequently, Emma is frequently left alone with her own restless mind. And as the Arabic source astutely points out, because she possesses no desire to marry, she just relishes her independence and power too much, she requires an outlet for her mental energy.
A project.
Yes. She decides to fill her time by directing the life of a new companion.
Which transitions us perfectly to the next phase. She's bored, she has no one to challenge her, and the one person who used to keep her grounded, Miss Taylor, has moved out. So she needs a new project.
And this is where the trouble really starts.
Right, and this is where we dive into the ethics of what I want to call human chess. Enter Harriet Smith.
Harriet Smith is introduced as a 17-year-old girl living at a local boarding school run by a Mrs. Goddard. She is described as incredibly pretty, sweet-tempered, but remarkably lacking in intellectual vigor.
Not the sharpest tool in the shed.
No. And crucially, for our understanding of the social dynamics, the text identifies her as the natural daughter of nobody knows whom.
Let's unpack that phrase, natural daughter, because for a modern listener, that might just sound like she loves nature or something.
Oh, it means something entirely different.
But in the 19th century, that carries a massive, heavy stigma, doesn't it?
It is a profound social anchor. Being a natural daughter is a polite euphemism for being illegitimate, born out of wedlock.
Wow. Yeah.
In the highly stratified, class-conscious society of early 19th century England, this meant she had no defined social standing, no familial protection, and very bleak prospects for marriage among the gentry. She exists on the extreme margins of respectable society.
So Harriet is basically a social cipher. She has no family history, no strong intellect of her own, and this very docile, grateful personality. From a philosophical standpoint, she sounds like the perfect target for someone with Emma's specific brand of God complex.
Exactly. Harriet represents what the philosopher John Locke termed tabula rasa, the blank slate.
The blank slate.
Yes. Emma looks at Harriet and does not see an autonomous individual with inherent rights. She sees raw material.
That's terrifying.
The text is chillingly explicit about Emma's internal monologue regarding Harriet. It says she would notice her, she would improve her, she would detach her from her bad acquaintance and introduce her into good society. She would form her opinions and her manners.
She would form her opinions. That is the line that stopped me cold. She's treating this human being like wet clay.
It is a complete objectification.
It reminds me of someone playing a life simulation video game like The Sims. Have you ever seen people play that?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You just drag and drop relationships. You decide who your little avatar marries, what job they get, what they wear, and you totally forget that if these were real people, they would have internal lives, fears, and desires.
You lose sight of their humanity entirely.
Yeah. But I struggle with Emma's motivation here. Is she just being malicious? Does she actually care about Harriet's happiness in some twisted way? Or is she purely trying to prove her own superiority?
To understand her motivation, we must apply Immanuel Kant's moral philosophy, specifically his formulation of the categorical imperative.
Okay, stop right there. I need you to translate that into plain English. What is the categorical imperative?
Kant argued that a foundational rule of morality is that you must act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end in itself.
Never merely as a means to an end. So, in simpler terms,
you cannot use people merely as tools to get what you want. You must respect their inherent dignity and autonomy.
So using someone as a stepping stone or a prop in your own personal play violates that rule.
Precisely, and Emma is violently violating this principle. She is using Harriet as a means to an end.
And what is her end?
The end in this case is Emma's own amusement, the alleviation of her boredom, and the validation of her self-appointed genius as a matchmaker. She's treating Harriet as an aesthetic project, a doll to be dressed up and positioned on the social chessboard, entirely neglecting Harriet's authentic vulnerabilities.
And the immediate casualty of this human chess game is a young man named Robert Martin. Talk about objective reality colliding with Emma's aesthetic project.
Yes, Robert Martin is a fascinating character.
Harriet has a massive crush on this guy. She spent the summer with his family. He walks miles just to bring her walnuts. And then he sends a letter proposing marriage. But Emma intercepts the narrative.
The arrival of Robert Martin's letter is a critical test of Emma's epistemology. The text describes Emma reading the letter and being genuinely surprised.
Because it's actually good.
Exactly. It expressed good sense, warm attachment, liberality, propriety, even delicacy of feeling. It is, by all objective measures, an excellent proposal from a solid, respectable man.
But Emma's vanity just completely rejects it, right?
Yeah.
Why? If the letter is so good, why does she instantly decide to destroy the relationship?
Because of class prejudice and her need for absolute control. Robert Martin is a yeoman farmer. He leases land. He manages a large agricultural enterprise. He works for a living.
He's not a gentleman of leisure.
No. Emma's constructed reality demands that Harriet, her chosen project, must be elevated to the highest ranks of society. A farmer disrupts that narrative.
Oh, I see.
The text provides a startling, quote, outlining Emma's worldview. She tells Harriet that the yeomanry are precisely the order of people with whom I feel I can have nothing to do.
Wow.
She elaborates that a degree lower, she might help them with charity, but a farmer is independent. She says he is as much above my notice as in every other he is below it.
I want to linger on that logic because it's so twisted and revealing. As much above my notice as in every other he is below it. She is explicitly admitting that she only wants to interact with two types of people, right?
Yes.
Those who are her absolute social equals and those who are so destitute they require her charity. Robert Martin requires nothing from her. He is independent, he reads, he runs a business. Because he doesn't need her, she views him as a threat, and therefore she decides he is entirely beneath her.
It is a defense mechanism against anyone outside her control, and her manipulation of Harriet to reject him is a masterclass in psychological coercion.
Because she doesn't just forbid it, does she?
No, she does not explicitly order Harriet to say no. Instead, she boxes her in. She weaponizes Harriet's deep fear of abandonment. Emma implies that if Harriet marries a farmer, Emma will never be able to visit her because it would be social suicide.
Oh, that is so manipulative.
She threatens Harriet with the complete withdrawal of her friendship and patronage.
Which, for a girl with no family and no money, is basically a death sentence socially. She forces Harriet to choose between the man she loves and the only powerful protector she has ever known. It's brutal.
It truly is.
And this is exactly the point where Mr. Knightley finds out and explodes.
The ensuing argument between Mr. Knightley and Emma perfectly encapsulates the philosophical divide of the entire narrative. Knightley acts as the voice of objective, rational truth.
The rock through the glass.
Exactly. He brings the cold, hard facts of reality into Emma's biodome. He points out that Robert Martin is Harriet's superior in sense and situation. He reminds Emma that Harriet is the natural daughter of nobody knows whom, with probably no settled provision at all, and certainly no respectable relations.
He's not sugarcoating it.
Not at all. His final verdict is devastatingly clear. He says, "You have been no friend to Harriet Smith."
Knightley does not hold back. He tries to explain how the actual world works. He tells her, men of sense, whatever you may choose to say, do not want silly wives. Men of family would not be very fond of connecting themselves with a girl of such obscurity.
He is pleading with her to be reasonable.
Yeah, he is practically begging Emma to see that by puffing Harriet up with these vain, impossible expectations, she is setting this vulnerable girl up for total ruin. But how does Emma respond to this dose of reality? Does it crack the dome at all?
Not in the slightest. What is fascinating here is how Emma's mind instantly rationalizes away Knightley's logic. She retreats further into her constructed reality.
Double down.
Exactly. Because she wants Harriet to be the secret daughter of a gentleman, she simply declares it to be a high probability. Because she wants Harriet to marry a man of consequence, she assumes her own willpower will make it inevitable.
It's pure confirmation bias and magical thinking. Knightley gets so frustrated he leaves, but not before warning her about her new specific target for Harriet, right? The local vicar, Mr. Elton.
Yes.
Knightley drops this incredible line, Elton may talk sentimentally, but he will act rationally. He knows the value of good income. But Emma just brushes him off. She genuinely believes she possesses some special, almost mystical insight into human nature that everyone else lacks.
And this supreme overconfidence leads us directly into the grand disaster of the narrative. Because Emma is absolutely convinced she can force Mr. Elton to fall in love with Harriet.
Oh, this is going to be good.
And the way she gathers evidence to prove this hypothesis is one of the most brilliant studies of psychological self-deception in literature.
So let's break down the Mr. Elton debacle. Because if she's insulated by this biodome, what happens when she actually tries to impose her fictional narrative onto a real person who has his own hidden agenda?
The architecture of her delusion faces its first severe structural stress test. Emma begins maneuvering Harriet and Elton together at every opportunity. She conceives a plan to paint a watercolor portrait of Harriet, a whole-length picture.
Right.
During the painting sessions, Elton constantly hovers around the easel, sighing heavily and offering exaggerated, almost theatrical compliments.
The portrait painting scene is incredible because it physically manifests how Emma distorts reality. She admits to herself, internally, that she is intentionally painting Harriet to look taller, more elegant, and essentially better than she actually looks in real life.
She is literally altering the picture of reality.
Exactly. And when someone in the room points out that the proportions are wrong, Elton leaps to defend the distortion.
We must look closely at Elton's dialogue here. The text provides his exact flustered defense.
Oh, please share it.
He says, "Oh no, certainly not too tall, not in the least too tall. Consider she is sitting down," which naturally presents a different, which in short gives exactly the idea, and the proportions must be preserved, you know?
That makes absolutely zero sense.
It doesn't. He is talking absolute, incoherent nonsense purely to flatter the artist. He adopts the phrase "exactly so" in response to literally every opinion Emma voices.
Exactly so. It's the ultimate yes man catchphrase. But I want to understand the mechanism here. How does Emma, who is supposed to be so clever, not see that he is flattering her, not Harriet?
This is the textbook definition of confirmation bias in action.
Okay, let's unpack confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias is the cognitive tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing hypotheses while actively ignoring contradictory data.
So her brain only sees what it wants to see.
Exactly. Emma's vanity acts as an impenetrable filter on her perception. She has established the hypothesis that Elton loves Harriet. Therefore, her brain forcefully interprets every single action Elton takes as evidence supporting that hypothesis.
So when Elton praises the distorted portrait, Emma assumes he's blinded by his love for the subject, Harriet. But in reality, he is trying to ingratiate himself with the artist, Emma.
Precisely. She is completely blind to his actual motivations because processing those motivations would require her to admit her hypothesis was wrong. This cognitive dissonance reaches its absolute peak with the incident of the charade.
Yes, the riddle. Elton leaves a piece of paper on the table with a poem. He claims a friend wrote it for a lady he admires, but Emma's quote-unquote genius immediately deduces that Elton wrote it himself.
Of course she does.
She reads it out loud to Harriet. It's a riddle where the first part describes the wealth and pomp of kings, which is the word court, and the second part describes the monarch of the seas, which is a ship, courtship. But it's the final lines of the poem that are so crucial.
The final stanza reads, "And woman, lovely woman, reigns alone. Thy ready wit the word will soon supply. May its approval beam in that soft eye."
I mean, if you look at the evidence objectively, the irony is agonizing. Elton is describing the woman he loves as having a ready wit. Wit is the defining, universally acknowledged characteristic of Emma Woodhouse.
Yes, It is her trademark.
Harriet Smith, as we've established, is sweet, but she is entirely devoid of wit.
Yet look at how Emma's epistemic bubble processes this starkly contradictory evidence. She hands the poem to Harriet and definitively declares, "There is so pointed and so particular a meaning in this compliment that I cannot have a doubt as to Mr. Elton's intentions. You are his object."
Wow.
Emma's overwhelming arrogance makes her entirely blind to Elton's blatant social climbing.
Let's talk about Elton's actual agenda, because it exposes the total failure of Emma's worldview. Elton is a vicar. He has a respectable position, but he doesn't have a massive fortune.
No, he is looking for a rich wife to elevate his status.
Harriet is a penniless, illegitimate boarder with zero connections. Emma is the heiress of Hartfield with £30,000 and the highest social rank in the county. If you take away Emma's romantic delusions, it is glaringly obvious who the ambitious vicar is targeting.
But her biodome is so thoroughly sealed that she cannot perceive it, until inevitably the pressure from the outside world forces a breach.
This is the carriage ride, right?
Yes. This occurs on Christmas Eve, following a dinner party at the Westons' house, Randall's. The physical setting of this scene is highly symbolic.
Set the scene for us. What is happening?
Harriet is ill and unable to attend the dinner. Emma, still clinging to her narrative, attempts to convince Elton to remain at home as well, assuming a devastated lover would wish to be near his sick beloved.
Because that fits her script.
Exactly. Instead, Elton attends the party, and he is in an incredibly buoyant, festive, almost aggressive mood. It is snowing heavily outside. Upon the conclusion of the evening, through a logistical twist of fate, Emma and Elton find themselves alone in a carriage traveling back to Hartfield.
They are trapped in this dark, enclosed space. And this is where the truth violently intrudes on Emma's fiction.
It is the precise moment the script is inverted. Inside the carriage, freed from social observation, Mr. Elton seizes Emma's hand and passionately proposes marriage to her.
Oh my gosh.
He declares he has never cared for Harriet Smith in the slightest, and that every sigh, every compliment, every charade has been calculated to mark his adoration of Emma.
Emma's reaction must be absolute panic. Her brain is trying to process reality crashing through the glass.
She is horrified and repulsed. The text captures her frantic denial. She cries, "No, sir, it confesses no such thing. So far from having long understood you, I have been in a most complete error with respect to your views, till this moment."
The fascinating thing is that Elton is equally shocked and offended. When Emma finally stammers out that she thought he was in love with Harriet, Elton's sentimental, poetic facade instantly drops. He practically sneers.
The English source provides his deeply insulted response. He says, "I am not, I think, quite so much at a loss. I need not so totally despair of an equal alliance as to be addressing myself to Miss Smith."
Ouch.
He is fundamentally outraged that Emma would presume he would lower himself to marry an illegitimate nobody. The Arabic source notes that this confrontation creates a massive, irreparable rift. Mr. Elton is deeply resentful that Emma judged his social value to be so low.
This moment raises an incredibly important question about the nature of power. Emma has spent her whole life and the whole story believing she is in control. She swore she would never marry because she didn't want to surrender her independence to a man.
Yes.
But in that dark carriage, with Elton physically grabbing her hand and imposing his will on her, she is suddenly entirely powerless.
It is a stark exposure of her vulnerability. Her wealth and social standing protect her in the drawing room, but in the raw reality of the carriage, she realizes she is subject to the desires and aggressions of others just like anyone else.
It makes me think of a film director who realizes halfway through a shoot that the actors have been reading from a completely different script the entire time. You yell cut, but they just look at you and keep acting out their own scene.
Exactly.
She thought she was writing a gentle romantic comedy for Harriet, but she discovers she was actually the unwitting star of a cynical, social climbing drama directed by Elton.
That is a very apt analogy. It completely shatters her epistemological confidence. She's forced to return home, weep in isolation, and confront the dual realization that she has not only humiliated herself through her blindness, but she has also genuinely broken Harriet's heart for absolutely nothing.
She realizes Mr. Knightley was completely right about Elton. He will act rationally. It forces a reset, doesn't it? She has to sit down and admit she was wrong.
It forces a minor reset. She recognizes the immediate pain she has caused Harriet, and she vows to cease matchmaking. But we must be careful not to overstate this awakening.
Oh, she's not cured yet.
No. The architecture of her delusion is not fully dismantled. The walls of the biodome have cracked, the cold air has rushed in momentarily, but the structure has not fallen.
Right, because her fundamental problem, her isolation and lack of friction, hasn't been solved. And just as she is trying to process this humiliating failure, the ecosystem of Highbury is disrupted by a new kind of philosophical challenge. We get some new arrivals in town who bring the threat of the authentic self.
The new year introduces variables that Emma cannot control. First, Mr. Elton returns from a trip with a new bride, the intensely snobbish, pretentious Mrs. Elton.
Oh, Mrs. Elton.
The Arabic source highlights that Mrs. Elton immediately attempts to usurp Emma's position as the queen bee of the village social scene. But more importantly, for Emma's psychological development, we see the arrival of two figures who act as powerful, polarized mirrors for Emma's own character: Jane Fairfax and Frank Churchill.
Let's start with Jane Fairfax, because Emma's reaction to her is so visceral and telling. Who is Jane, and why does Emma hate her so much?
Jane Fairfax is the niece of Miss Bates, the poor, endlessly talkative spinster we briefly mentioned earlier as part of Emma's intellectual wasteland. Jane is the exact same age as Emma. However, unlike Emma, Jane is impoverished.
Okay.
She was raised away from Highbury by a wealthy family, the Campbells, who provided her with an excellent education. But now, lacking a fortune, she's had to return to Highbury to face the grim prospect of becoming a governess.
Which, in that era, is basically high-class servitude. It's a brutal drop in status.
Exactly. Yet, despite her poverty and bleak future, Jane is exquisitely beautiful, elegant, and genuinely accomplished. She possesses immense discipline. She plays the piano brilliantly, far better than Emma.
And Emma harbors this deep, irrational resentment toward her. The text is so revealing here. It says, Emma felt sorry to have to pay civilities to a person she did not like through 3 long months, to be always doing more than she wished and less than she ought.
It highlights her internal conflict perfectly.
It's exhausting for Emma just to be in the same room as Jane. Why? If Jane is so perfect, why does Emma loathe her?
To understand this, we can turn to the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche and his concept of resentment.
Okay, let's translate resentment for our listeners. How does that differ from just regular resentment or jealousy?
Resentment is a specific type of psychological hostility. It is a deep-seated hostility directed toward an object or person that one identifies as the cause of one's frustration. But it is fundamentally an assignment of blame for one's own internal sense of inferiority.
Oh, I see.
Mr. Knightley correctly diagnoses this in Emma. He tells her plainly that she dislikes Jane, because Jane is the standard of perfection that Emma continually falls short of.
That makes so much sense. Jane is a mirror reflecting Emma's own lack of discipline. Jane is poor, but she is genuinely superior in her talents, her stoic grace, and her work ethic.
Yes.
Emma is rich, but she's superficial. She jumps from project to project. She never finishes her reading list. She never completes her drawings. Jane's mere existence is a silent, standing reproach to Emma's unearned privilege.
Precisely. Jane represents the threat of the authentic. When Jane plays the piano, Emma is forced into an uncomfortable psychological corner. She must display what the text calls an affectation of candor when praising Jane, all while internally burning with the realization that her own playing is vastly inferior.
That has got hurt her ego.
Furthermore, Jane's extreme reserve frustrates Emma's need for control. Emma complains that Jane is wrapped up in a cloak of politeness, meaning Emma cannot penetrate her mind or dictate her actions.
It's a universal human experience, isn't it? Why is it that we are often most irritated by the people who possess the exact virtues we secretly know we lack? We want to tear them down to protect our own ego.
It is a defense mechanism.
But if Jane is the mirror of what Emma should be, who is the other new arrival?
On the absolute opposite end of the ethical spectrum, we have Frank Churchill. Frank is the son of Mr. Weston from his first marriage. He was raised entirely away from Highbury by his wealthy, capricious aunt, Mrs. Churchill, at her estate, Enscombe.
So he's got money.
A lot of it. Frank has been promising to visit his father for years, but has perpetually made excuses. Finally, he arrives, and he is incredibly handsome, charming, lively, and he immediately sets his sights on Emma.
And Emma is thrilled. They engage in this very public, highly performative flirtation. They plan a ball, they whisper in corners, they gossip, they mock Jane Fairfax together.
They feed off each other's vanity.
The Arabic source makes a great point here, actually. It notes that Emma is eager to have a romantic attachment with him, even if she doesn't actually want to marry him. She just craves the centrality and the attention.
Performative is the essential word. Their entire interaction is a public display. But this leads us to the massive plot twist that the Arabic source reveals, the hidden truth underlying all these social interactions. Frank Churchill and Jane Fairfax are secretly engaged.
I want to let that sink in for the listener because it changes everything about how we view Frank. They are secretly engaged.
Yes. They met at the seaside town of Weymouth prior to arriving in Highbury and fell deeply in love. But because Frank's tyrannical aunt would absolutely disinherit him if he married a penniless girl like Jane, they are forced to keep the engagement a total secret.
Which means Frank's entire public flirtation with Emma is a calculated smokescreen. He is deliberately using Emma's vanity, her well-known desire to be the center of attention, to distract the gossips of the village from his real relationship with Jane.
He weaponizes Emma's ego against her.
It is exactly like a magician's misdirection. He waves the flashy, colorful handkerchief in the air, which is his outrageous flirting with the richest girl in town, so everyone stares at that hand.
Yes.
Meanwhile, his other hand is in the shadows, passing secret notes and lingering glances to Jane Fairfax. And Emma, who still thinks she's the most observant, clever person in the room, falls for it completely.
This is why Frank serves as the second mirror for Emma. If Jane reflects what Emma ought to be, Frank reflects what Emma currently is.
Oh.
He embodies her absolute worst traits. He is deeply privileged, fundamentally manipulative, and he treats the village of Highbury as a playground for his own amusement, entirely heedless of the collateral damage his deception causes.
The collateral damage is what gets me. Think about the sheer psychological agony Jane Fairfax must be enduring. She is sitting quietly in poverty, terrified about her future, forced to watch the man she is secretly engaged to publicly court the richest, most powerful girl in town, and she can't say a word.
It is a torturous position for Jane, and Emma is entirely oblivious to this suffering because her own ego is being continuously fed by Frank's attention. Frank is essentially doing to Emma exactly what Emma did to Harriet Smith.
Treating her as a pawn.
Yes, treating her as a pawn in a game for his own purposes. But because Emma is the pawn this time, her epistemic bubble prevents her from seeing the board.
It's the ultimate failure of her intelligence. She relies on Frank's flattery because it confirms her belief in her own desirability and wit. She actively ignores all the subtle clues that actually tie Frank and Jane together.
There's so many clues.
There's a mysterious gift of a piano to Jane. Frank makes slips of the tongue regarding things only Jane could have told him. But processing those clues would require Emma to dismantle her own self-centered narrative and admit she isn't the center of his universe.
And this unchecked arrogance, heavily fueled by Frank's constant flattery and her own simmering resentment of Jane, begins to build toward a dangerous climax.
It's a powder keg.
It is. The pressure cooker of Highbury's social dynamics reaches a boiling point, leading us directly to the ultimate existential crisis of the story, the incident at Box Hill.
Let's slow down and really set the scene for Box Hill, because this is the moment everything unravels.
Yeah.
It's an outdoor picnic, an excursion for the entire social circle. What is the atmosphere like?
The atmosphere is incredibly strained. The heat of the day is oppressive, which mirrors the social tension. The Eltons are present and being insufferably rude.
Naturally.
Jane Fairfax is physically exhausted and emotionally miserable from the strain of her secret. Frank Churchill is acting erratically, overcompensating for the tension with forced manic hilarity. And Emma is agitated.
Why is she agitated?
She is desperately trying to keep up the rapid-fire, witty banter with Frank to maintain her perceived position as the sparkling, undisputed center of the group.
Right, she feels the pressure to perform. And Frank suggests a game to entertain everyone. He announces that Emma commands everyone to tell her one thing very clever, or two things moderately clever, or three things very dull indeed.
And it is at this exact moment that Miss Bates speaks up. Miss Bates, the harmless, impoverished, constantly talking spinster who relies entirely on the charity of the village.
Oh, this part is so hard to read.
She says, with genuine, good-natured humility, three things very dull indeed. That will just do for me, you know? I shall be sure to say three dull things as soon as ever I open my mouth, shan't I?
It's a self-deprecating joke. She knows she talks too much about boring things. But Emma... well, Emma just can't let it go, can she?
No. The text notes that Emma is caught up in thoughtless spirits and the pride of the moment. She cannot resist the impulse to prove her own sharpness, even at the expense of a deeply vulnerable person. She replies to Miss Bates, ma'am, but there may be a difficulty. Pardon me, but you will be limited as to number only three at once.
Ouch. Let's break down exactly what she's saying there. She is publicly stating, excuse me, but you're going to have to stop talking after three dull things, which will be completely impossible for you because you are terminally boring.
It is a devastating blow. It takes Miss Bates a second to process the insult. The text describes a slight blush, showing that the words could pain her. She turns to Mr. Knightley and murmurs, I must make myself very disagreeable, or she would not have said such a thing to an old friend.
It is profoundly heartbreaking.
It really is. It's the definition of punching down. Emma has used her massive social power, her youth, her wealth, and her sharp intellect to publicly humiliate a woman who is already entirely marginalized by poverty and age.
She could have made a joke at Frank's expense or Elton's, but she targeted the weakest person in the circle just to get a laugh.
From a philosophical standpoint, it is a catastrophic ethical failure. It is the grim culmination of her epistemic closure. She has completely prioritized aesthetics, being witty, putting on a good show, appearing superior over fundamental human ethics and basic compassion.
But the true philosophical catharsis does not happen in the moment of the insult, does it?
No, it happens later as the party is breaking up and people are heading to their carriages.
Right. Mr. Knightley pulls Emma aside, and he delivers what has to be the most devastating, articulate, moral reprimand in English literature.
The English source captures his exact words, and they are essential. He says, "Emma, I must once more speak to you, as I have been used to do. How could you be so unfeeling to Miss Bates? How could you be so insolent in your wit to a woman of her character, age, and situation?"
And at first, Emma tries to deflect, doesn't she? She tries to laugh it off, claiming Miss Bates is ridiculous, probably didn't even understand the insult. But Knightley refuses to let her retreat back into her bubble.
Listen carefully to the core of his argument, because it explicitly outlines the moral duty of the privileged.
Lay it on us.
He tells her, were she a woman of fortune, I would leave every harmless absurdity to take its chance. Were she your equal in situation? But Emma, consider how far this is from being the case. She is poor. She has sunk from the comforts she was born to, and if she lived to old age, must probably sink more. Her situation should secure your compassion. It was badly done indeed.
It was badly done indeed. That line gives me chills. Knightley is fundamentally explaining the ethics of power. He is telling her that her privilege, her wealth, her intelligence, they are not a license for cruelty.
Not at all.
Because Miss Bates is poor, because she is sinking in society, Emma actually has a moral obligation to protect her, to shield her, not to mock her for cheap entertainment.
It is a brutal collision with reality. The Arabic source notes that this specific reprimand is the absolute turning point of the entire narrative. Emma is left alone in her carriage for the ride home to Hartfield, and for the very first time in her 21 years, the biodome completely, catastrophically collapses.
How does the text describe her reaction in the carriage? Because we saw her cry after the Elton disaster, but this feels different.
It is entirely different. The text states that Emma felt the tears running down her cheeks almost all the way home without being at any trouble to check them, extraordinary as they were.
So she's not just feeling sorry for herself.
No, after the Elton debacle, she wept tears of wounded vanity. These are tears of profound, agonizing existential regret.
It's the birth of true empathy.
Exactly. Knightley has forcefully broken her solipsism. He has forced her to recognize the inherent fragile dignity of the other. She has finally collided with a moral truth that her cleverness cannot rationalize away. She cannot spin this. She was objectively wrong. She was objectively cruel.
And it actually changes her behavior. She doesn't just sit and sulk. She wakes up the next morning and goes directly to Miss Bates's house to apologize, to show respect, to try and mend the damage.
That is a crucial step.
But the universe isn't quite done teaching Emma a lesson. Just as she commits to trying to be a better, more grounded person, the final massive domino falls.
The secret engagement between Frank Churchill and Jane Fairfax finally comes to light. The entire village is shocked.
Emma is initially embarrassed that she was used as a public smokescreen, but she actually gets over her own pride pretty quickly, realizing she never genuinely loved Frank anyway, but her immediate concern turns to someone else.
She immediately worries about the monster she created, Harriet Smith.
Because earlier, Harriet had been frightened by some wandering people on a road, and Frank Churchill happened to ride by and rescue her. And Emma, once again projecting her own romantic, dramatic narratives onto reality, assumed that this rescue meant Harriet had fallen desperately in love with Frank. So Emma assumes this news of Frank's engagement to Jane is going to destroy Harriet.
Emma sits Harriet down to break the news as gently as possible. But the Arabic source highlights the beautiful, deeply painful twist that occurs here. Harriet reacts with total indifference to the news about Frank.
Wait, what?
Emma is utterly confused. She asks Harriet who she is talking about, and Harriet reveals that the man she loves is not the one who rescued her on the road. The man she loves is the one who rescued her at a recent ball when Mr. Elton publicly snubbed her and refused to dance with her.
And who stepped in to dance with the humiliated Harriet? Mr. Knightley.
Yes. And because Emma had previously spent months telling Harriet that there are no social barriers to true love, and because Emma had systematically puffed up Harriet's vanity, Harriet now genuinely, earnestly believes that Mr. Knightley, the greatest landowner in the parish, the voice of objective truth, might actually be in love with her, the illegitimate boarder.
This is the moment. This is where the ego doesn't just crack, it vaporizes. I have the quote right here. The text says, "It darted through her with the speed of an arrow that Mr. Knightley must marry no one but herself."
It is the ultimate existential epiphany. Emma has spent the entire narrative trying to write everyone else's ending. She plotted for Miss Taylor, she manipulated Harriet, she assumed she knew the inner workings of Frank and Jane, yet she was entirely catastrophically blind to the reality of her own heart.
She had no idea.
She did not realize she was in love with Mr. Knightley until the very monster of vanity she created in Harriet Smith threatened to take him away from her.
It is such a beautiful, terrifying, cosmic irony. She suddenly realizes she isn't the puppet master standing above the board. She is just a piece on the board.
Yes, she is subject to the same rules as everyone else.
She's just as vulnerable, just as foolish, and just as subject to the chaotic, unpredictable forces of love and reality as the people she has been manipulating. And the worst part is she realizes that if Harriet actually marries Knightley, it will be entirely Emma's own fault.
The text notes her agonizing reflection. It says, "What could be increasing Emma's wretchedness but the reflection never far distant from her mind, that it had been all her own work. Her solipsism is definitively, permanently cured."
She finally sees it.
She recognizes that she cannot control the world, and more importantly, she realizes that she does not want to control the world if it means losing the one person who possesses the integrity to tell her the harsh truth.
So how does it all resolve? Because the sources give us the ending, and it ties up these philosophical threads perfectly.
The resolution brings the epistemological journey to a satisfying close. Mr. Knightley, who it turns out has been agonizingly jealous of Frank Churchill because he mistakenly thought Emma loved Frank, finally proposes to Emma.
Oh, thank goodness.
They achieve a union based on mutual truth and clear-sightedness rather than illusion.
And he even solves the ultimate architectural problem, the Hartfield biodome. Because Mr. Woodhouse could never psychologically survive Emma leaving him, Knightley agrees to sacrifice his own independence and move into Hartfield. He brings objective reality into the dome permanently. And what about Harriet?
Harriet, while in London, bumps into Robert Martin.
The farmer.
Yes, the sensible yeoman farmer she rejected at the very beginning under Emma's influence. Stripped of the grand illusions Emma fed her about marrying vicars and squires, Harriet recognizes Robert Martin's genuine worth. She realizes he's a good, solid man, and they happily marry.
And the crucial detail is that Emma finally acknowledges Robert Martin's worth too. She accepts the marriage with grace. She has moved from a state of isolated, arrogant delusion to a state of engaged, empathetic reality. She has learned the hardest lesson, that true intelligence is not about manipulating others to fit your personal narrative, but about possessing the humility to see people as they truly are and to recognize your own profound limitations.
It is a remarkable, psychologically dense trajectory. We see that Jane Austen is not merely writing a romance. She is meticulously charting the vital, often agonizing process of growing up.
It's a coming-of-age story.
It is the journey of moving from believing you are the center of the universe to accepting that you are just one flawed person among many, bound by deep ethical duties to those around you.
We have gone on quite an intense journey today. We started in the comfortable, isolated architecture of Emma's delusion at Hartfield, where her subjective opinions were treated as objective law. We analyzed the ethical failures of her human chess, treating people like Harriet Smith as blank canvases for her own amusement.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We winced as her echo chamber shattered in that dark carriage ride with Mr. Elton, and as she was forced to confront the authentic superiority of Jane Fairfax. And finally, we witnessed the painful but utterly necessary shattering of her ego at Box Hill, leading to genuine moral maturity and self-awareness.
It serves as a timeless warning about the dangers of unchecked privilege and the vital necessity of surrounding ourselves with people who have the courage to tell us when we are wrong.
And this brings it all directly back to you listening right now. Because if we are honest with ourselves, we all have our own heart fields, we all have our comfort zones where our opinions are law, and we are insulated from harsh truths. In our modern age, we are surrounded by highly curated social media feeds, algorithmic echo chambers designed specifically to only show us what we already agree with.
That is the specific danger of the modern algorithmic biodome. It feels so incredibly safe and validating, right up until the moment it entirely deprives you of the oxygen of the objective truth.
Exactly. We construct these flawless digital realities. We build feeds that flatter our intelligence and hide our flaws. We have the unprecedented ability to simply block, mute, or cancel anyone who challenges our worldview. We look at other people's lives and think we know exactly how to fix them, just like Emma did. So I want to leave you with this final lingering thought to mull over as you go about your day. If you are living in an environment, whether physical or digital, that never tells you no, how can you ever know who you really are? And what will it take in your own perfectly curated life for someone to finally throw a rock through the glass, look you in the eye, and say, "It was badly done"?
A deeply provocative question to end our analysis on.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.